Hello YouTube, this is Hunter Surge with another Elestrals Firestorm video. Today we're going to be starting a bunch of quick deck profiles. We're going to be going over a bunch of the new strategies available to us in Firestorm because there's a lot of cool stuff that you can explore in this set. Real quick before we get started, I now have an official affiliate code, so if you're buying anything from the Elestrals store, I would really appreciate you if you would use my affiliate code down in the description. With that said, today we're not going to be going over any of the new star deck strategies or anything like that. We're going to be going over an old strategy that picked up some really big buffs in this latest set. Today we are going to be talking about Blazerus OTK. So let's get into it. Alright, and here we are with the list. As usual, we will do a layout of the main deck, then we'll go into the spirit deck. There's no side deck constructed this time because this deck is very all in and sideboarding is a bit weird. And we'll also talk a bit about executing the combo, given the nature of this deck. So the basics of Blazerus OTK is Blazerus is this cool 2-cost with the effect that it can attack twice during a battle phase. And if it destroys 2 Elestrals by battle in the same battle phase, it can ascend into Trifernal for a 3rd attack. Trifernal also has the effect that when your opponent casts an Elestral, you can expend fire in order to give it -3 defense. And if the Elestral goes to 0 defense, by this effect, it is destroyed. The other basic piece of the combo is Exalt Flare. Exalt Flare allows you to Nexus up to 2 fires, and when you do, you can special send this Exalt Flare to an Elestral with enchantment cost 1 fire or 2 fire, specifically. Has to be one of those exact enchantment costs. So the basics is you have a Divine out with 4 Fire Spirits on it. You Nexus 2 onto Exalt Flare. You ascend into another Exalt Flare. You Nexus 2 more to Exalt Flare. Ascend into Blazerus, and you will have that's 7 spirits on it that you can get into your opponent's face 3 times with. But if they have any counter runes, of course, that screws things up. The other important piece of the puzzle is Hurricane and Chariot Ride. Hurricane, you all know it well probably if you're playing this game. For a wind, thunder, and a water, this invoke rune will destroy every face down rune on the field. And Helios' Chariot Ride, for 2 runes of any type, it's a counter rune that you flip up during the draw phase, and for this turn, your opponent cannot use any runes. Actually, I think it's both players? No, only opponents. Only opponents. So by beginning your combo turn with one of these 2, you will prevent your opponent from using any counter runes to stop you when you go for your big push. The basics is a 5-card combo, right? That's a lot of pieces. Now you can get a significant amount of damage by just going 1 Exalt Flare, and a lot of the times you will have to settle for that. But even if we're only doing 1 Exalt Flare, that's still a 4-piece combo. That's a lot to assemble. Well, one of the reasons that this is a lot better now is because we have gotten a lot more access to one card that can help us find our pieces. That card is Scavacol. Scavacol is a 2 fire enchantment cost Elestral from Daybreak. That is a 5/4, and when you cast it, you can expend a fire to search your deck for any 2 cards that have either enchantment cost 1 fire or enchantment cost 2 fire. So the cards we can search with that are Blazerus, Exalt Flare, the Ignectors can be searched, Torsion can be searched, Comagma can be searched, Hestia can be searched, and Hephaestus can be searched. Almost every piece of the combo and some extra stuff that we want to have access to sometimes can be directly searched by Scavacol. And with the right setup, you can go into the combo immediately. If you did an Ignector play on the last turn, and you ascended the Scavacol over one of those, you will then be able to still have your cast, still have still have access to, okay, I'm going to go Hestia, cast out Exalt Flare, ascend into Blazerus, and you can siphon the spirits off of Scavacol onto Blazerus when you do that, so that you have even more spirits under Blazerus. Now, there's one other thing you have to worry about, of course, which is, hey, what if my opponent's Elestrals are in defense? If they're in defense, that's going to reduce the damage I can do massively. Even if I get to go into Trifernal, what am I going to do about defense Elestrals? Well, that is what our 1 copy of Hephaestus and 1 copy of Bow of Artemis are here for. So Bow of Artemis is a card from Moonrise, is a 1 lunar artifact rune. That is very simple. It has a second effect that we do not care about. What we care about is this first effect, which is the Empowered Elestral deals piercing damage. So we can just pierce over our opponent's defense position Elestrals and get in all of our damage. And being an artifact rune, it can be searched by Hephaestus. So we're running this 1 copy of Hephaestus that we can search with Scavacol to find ourselves our Bow of Artemis. And Hephaestus also gets to function as an additional Nexus bank for us to use for our Exalt Flare pushes. Everything else is just like to help with our consistency. Ignector is a really good way of getting bodies on the board. For those unfamiliar, Ignector is a 1/2 that when you normal cast Ignector, you can special cast up to 2 more Elestral from your hand or deck in attack position with a fire enchantment. If you do, you must skip this this turn's battle phase. So you can't do the combo turn when you go for that. Ideally, you want to like go first and cast out one of these original Ignectors right away. Now, of course, Firestorm also introduces another Ignector. The Firestorm Ignector has a very simple effect. When you cast this Ignector, you search your deck for a Nectar of the Gods and add to your hand. In typical use cases, that's not a very good effect. Nectar of the Gods in a typical Elestrals deck is not very good. However, in the context of this deck, it's very powerful because it helps us get to our pieces. So we're on 3 Nectar of the Gods as well as the 1 Ignector to guarantee one of them gets to our hand. Very powerful stuff. And then for other consistency pieces, we have Colmegma as a 1 spirit fire Elestral that on receive you draw 1 and discard 1. This is mainly here because we just kind of need some more fire 1 cost Elestrals for us to cast out with Hestia and then ascend over to Scavacol or whatever. That is just like kind of important for us to have access to. So Colmegma ends up here. We have Torchen for the same reason. This could be Plucky, and Plucky could search both Hestia and Hephaestus. But again, we do kind of want the extra fire 1 costs. So we go with Torchen instead. What else? Ash Rabbit, of course. When you cast out Ash Rabbit, you get to look the top 3. Pick any card from among those and add to your hand. Really helps us get together the combo. Smoltuga is a 2/5 water that on cast gets to search your deck for a 1 cost fire and add to your hand. So this mainly lets us get the Exalt Flare or the Ignector to get things going. Very, very strong consistency tool. We haven't really gone over what it actually does, but Hestia is the critical piece of support this got. As long as we have an equal number of Elestrals or less Elestrals than our opponent, Hestia allows us to disenchant 2 fires from it to special cast out a 1 cost fire Elestral properly enchanted with a fire. So this allows us to like extend past our Scavacol, playing 1 out, casting out an Exalt Flare with the effect, and using Exalt Flare to go into Blazerus, stuff like that. And then we just, as our only like interaction counter runes, we have 3 Gorgon's Gaze, just to help us slow down our opponent, stop any nonsense that they're trying to do, that would really blow us out. And yeah, that's the basics of the deck. We're trying to get together a big combo with Blazerus, get a Blazerus out with 6 to 7 spirits on it, and blow through our opponent all in 1 turn. Yeah. That's the deck. Now, like, bear in mind, a lot of the time you're going to have to settle for a bit less. A lot of the time, to go for your play before your opponent gathers too many resources, you're gonna have to settle on, okay, I'm gonna route this Blazerus with like 4 spirits and knock my opponent down to like 2 or 3 spirits remaining, and that's just gonna have to be fine. And a lot of the time that is fine. A lot of the time they're going to have difficulty getting over that. There's one change I would potentially make in the spirit deck, but we'll go over that now. We'll go over the spirit deck now. So let's get over to that. All right. So for the spirit deck, mostly fire. This is what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is 12 fire here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, 12 fire. Most of the stuff we want to be doing requires fires, so we have a ton of fire in this deck. We have 3 waters for the small Tugas, and for the Hurricane. This can probably go down to 2 if you want. We have 3 Thunders for the Ass Rabbits and the Hurricane. You do want to be able to re-enchant the Ass Rabbit or play on another if an opportunity presents itself. So 3 is the correct number here. Then we have 1 Wind that we require for the Hurricane, and then 1 Lunar that we require for the Bow of Artemis. Now, there's one potential change I would make to the Spirit deck. I would maybe swap out this Water Spirit for a Frost Spirit, because if you do that, you can put the Frost on the Blazerus, and that way, if you deal a lot of damage to your opponent but don't quite kill them, they can't just Cryoblast your Blazerus when he comes over to them, because if they do that, they basically just win the game. So I do think like having 1 Frost in here for us to enchant onto the Blazerus would actually improve the deck quite a lot. And there's quite a number of games in my testing that would have been won if I had that 1 Frost instead. But that's it for that. Let us get into the combo. All right, so like starting off here, let's say you have a board like this. You went turn 1 Ignector. Assume our opponent beat over at least one of our Ignectors during our turn, and during their turn, and we have either a Hurricane in our hand or a Chariot Ride set. We use whichever one of those we need to. That plus we need either a Hestia, a Exalt Flare, and we have Hurricane or Chariot Ride, and we have Scavicle already available, and we have one of these 3 cards. Any one of these 3 cards is an option here. So we can go ascend the Scavicle over one of the Ignectors. Now, often when you do this, you're going to want to siphon the spirit from the other Ignector if it survived over to the Scavicle. The reason you want to do that is because you want to keep your number of Elestral count low so that Hestia is for sure live. Then we are going to expend a fire for Scavicle effect and search whichever 2 of these 3 that you're missing. From there, you can go Hestia, and we want to put the full 4 on it. And we can go Hestia to cast out the Exalt Flare. Then we want to Nexus 2 from Exalt Flare to ascend into Blazerus. If we had a Frost Spirit, let's say this is a Frost Spirit, this is when we would want to put it on, and we would also want to siphon 3 from the Scavicle over to the Blazerus. That assumes our opponent's stuff is in attack position, of course. If their stuff is in attack position and we're just going to get in for a lot of damage, that's great. If their stuff is in attack position, it can be better to leave the Scavicle up so the Scavicle can beat over their defense position thing, then Blazers can swing in twice for 4 damage each. But if you're going for a combo with that low damage, it's not always super worth it. Of course, if you have 2 of those pieces, Scavicle can instead search for the Hephaestus, get the bow, and equip the bow on. So this is dealing piercing, 6 damage twice. Then if you got to beat over 2 Elestrals, you can then go and ascend to the Trifernal for what, 7 to 8 more damage, and probably just win the game there. That's the sort of combo you're going for. Now, a decent amount of the time, you'll be in a situation where it's like, okay, I can go, like, I can go like cast out, like I can go like let's say cast out Smoltuga. Already have Hestia. So we have this scenario. We'll say we'll have say we have one of the disruptors, Hestia, and Blazerus. Those are the 3 cards we'll say we'll have. We go for the Smoltuga. We get ourselves an Exalt Flare to hand. Exalt Flare. We put out Hestia. We go Exalt Flare. Nexus 2 to the Exalt Flare. We go up into Blazerus. We can siphon off of this Smoltuga as well. And that'll give us a 5 Spirit Blazerus. Not quite as much damage, but enough to do a significant chunk to our opponent. That stuff is all very important. Now, this next section is both for Blazerus players and people looking to deal with Blazerus. As a Blazerus player, something you have to be hyper aware of is that these are not guarantees. There are things your opponent can do in response to this that can dampen the capabilities of your combo a lot. So let's go over those real quick. I'll pull out the 2 we really want to look. There's 3 cards we really want to look at here. We want to be looking at Tsunami, we want to be looking at Gorgon's Gaze, and we want to be looking at Altar. Those are the big 3. So let's say we're going for one of these 2 cards, and let's assume that our opponent has, we're just going to use these as an example of Elestrals. They have an Exalt Flare in attack, some Elestral in attack, some other Elestral in defense. Some Elestral with a water enchantment somewhere on the field. They can go when you use your Hurricane or your Chariot Ride. Because, like, the thing is, it is going to, anyone who is, like, decently familiar with what this deck is trying to do, anyone who's been around for long enough, is going to recognize what this deck is and what it's trying to do. Especially if they see Chariot Ride. It's a bit easier to hide what this deck is if you don't reveal the Chariot's Ride, if you don't have to use Chariot's Ride, if you get to use Hurricane, because Hurricane is used in normal decks. But if you use the Chariot Ride, it's going to be super obvious to, like, any experienced player what this is and what you're trying to do. So, like, when you go for the Chariot Ride or Hurricane and your opponent realizes what your deck is and what you're trying to do, they can go, say, a play like this. They go Tsunami, switch their Exalt Flare to defense, and while paying off their Smoltuga. So this means that, and this is part of why it's really, really important to be able to keep our Elestral count on the field as low as possible so that Hestia remains alive. Because tactics like this are going to be fairly common. So if your opponent does a tactic like this, they will be able to, they force you to have Artemis to get in your damage. 2, they make it impossible for you to get to Trifernal and get the 3rd hit in. Because if the deck gets the 3rd hit in, that's game over almost every time. If you are allowed to get to that 3rd hit, your opponent's just cooked. But if you're not able to ascend to Trifernal, then the deck becomes a lot more manageable. And you can only get to Trifernal if your opponent leaves up 2 Elestrals. That is the only time that is ever going to happen. So do not count on it. We need to keep the Trifernal in because it's valuable. But, like, do not count on that happening. Now, something else your opponent can do is, now say they have Gorgon's Gaze. Even though you don't have any Elestrals on the field. Let's put up a rabbit here. Even if they don't have any Elestrals on the field, they can still go, like, pay off these 2 on their field, target one of the Elestrals that is now under enchanted for Gorgon's target. Then these will both leave the field because of under enchantment. So even if they have, like, a 3 Elestral board, they can use a card like Gorgon's Gaze to get their board down to 1. They can go from 3 Elestrals down to just 1 on their field. And if any of those is in defense, they're going to leave up the one that's in defense to minimize the damage you're getting. And then lastly, we can of course do similar things with Altar of Stars. Let's say we have, your opponent has 3 Elestrals on the field. All of them are an attack. You flip up Gorgon's Gaze or Chariot Ride. In response, they use Altar. They pay 1 off of one of their Spirit Elestrals. Then they Nexus 1 from this one over here and switch this one to defense. So that you are, again, required to find both Artemis for the piercing and you are preventing them from getting the Trifernal and thus getting the 3rd attack. So these are the things to be aware of, both as someone playing the deck and as someone potentially fighting the deck. These are some very basic things you can do against Hurricane or Chariot's Ride when you recognize what they're on. And these are the things that you, as a Blazerus OTK player, have to be aware of your opponent being able to do, so you don't just get blown out when you think you have the game for sure. This is why it is mandatory that we run the 1 Hephaestus, 1 both Artemis, because we need to be able to, if we've assembled enough of our pieces, have the capacity to pierce over our opponent and deal a ton of damage to them, as much as we can manage to, at least. Especially because, against an experienced player, doing the Trifernal play is just not reliable. You will get to do it sometimes, and when you do, you'll just win the game. Sometimes they just won't have a chainable counter rune. Sometimes they just won't realize what they can do if you're playing a less experienced player. But when you get into playing more experienced players, they're going to know that they're going to be able to do things like this, and they are going to do it to prevent themselves from dying. The other thing I would be aware of if you want to play this deck is, let me pull it out real quick. Now, Gorgon's Gaze is always a pretty effective way of slowing down your stuff because, hey, Gorgon's Gaze can most notably stop the Scavacool search, and the Scavacool search is really important to what makes this deck strong. However, Pandora's Box is another card that's able to do that. And Pandora's Box is something we may be seeing a lot more of in sideboards this format, specifically because of bears. We'll go over bears in a deck profile at a later date, but the big Ursaden play that bears does cannot be stopped by Gorgon's Gaze, but Pandora's Box can stop it. So for that reason, you are likely to see Pandora's Box successful in sideboards a lot more often, and Pandora's Box is pretty strong for them to bring in to this matchup too, because, like, say for example, Shield. Shield isn't going to do anything ever in this matchup. Not ever. PTA as well. Those cards just don't do anything into this matchup because you're never going to have the chance to cast them profitably, because you're going to have your back row either disabled or blown up before they cast out any Elestrals on the key turn or attack with anything on the key turn. So those cards just aren't effective. So it's very easy once your opponent recognizes what you're on to go, okay, I'm going to take out these counter runes that are completely useless in this matchup and put in Pandora's Box so that I can disrupt your setup as much as possible and get myself in a winning position. So if you're going for a Scavacool on a turn where you haven't done your rune disruption, be aware of that. That's why it's important to know that that is very possible to cast Scavacool and still go for your combo that turn, because that enables you to Hurricane or Chariot Ride when you know you're going for a Scavacool, if you've already assembled enough pieces that you know, okay, I can just go into the combo here, and my Scavacool is going to be safe from a potential Pandora's Box or Gorgon's Gaze. Yeah. And that's going to be it for Blazerus OTK. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys bring great misery to the world and get Hurricane and Chariot Ride hit to 1 or Exalt Flare Band. I don't genuinely think this deck is a problem. I was kind of worried about it going into testing because it's very scary, but it is more counterable than you would expect. But it is also very, very terrifying. Very scary stuff. And if you like this kind of big combo deck, well, it's a lot more consistent and a lot more viable than it has been the past few sets. So feel free to go try it out and terrorize your locals. With that said, this is going to be Hunter Surge signing off.